Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to another video here. I have a bit of an update for my Blue Eyes White Dragon Buster Blader deck, and kind of wanted to talk about it. Be forewarned, this video might be a little long because I'm going to talk about some new ideas I had and some things I've been doing to test the deck out a little bit more to try to kind of optimize it and make it more consistent, make it less bricky, things like that. So a bunch of different iteration we're going through to try to perfect the deck as much as possible. Now, obviously, if you're playing the Primite version, that's going to be better. Overall, more consistent, less bricky, just overall a better control deck. The Blue Eyes Buster Blader deck is less of a control deck. It's more of a combo deck with hints of control, bit of a grind game. We do have grind game with True Light and the fact that we can keep reoccurring our Blue Eyes through that method, and we do have a bit of power with the Buster Blader in terms of if it stays on the board, plus if our Buster Dragon stays on the board, we basically just control the game from there. So yeah. So first off, I'm running a total of 42 cards now in the deck, and I'll kind of explain why I'm doing that. Main reason why we're playing 42 cards is because I wanted to fit 2 more cards in, but I couldn't really find a space for it. And on top of that, we want to go ahead and sort of minimize our chance of drawing our bricks, right? So we're playing Blue Eyes and Buster Blader. So those 2 cards, when they're in our hand, they don't really do anything. So we're trying to minimize drawing them a little bit without terribly affecting our consistency. So hence why we're going to 42. I've seen people play 43 or even 44 even. I think 42 is a nice sweet spot. It's not like, too egregious in going above 40, and it gives you a bit of a breathing room to add side cards and things like that without going too crazy. Anyways, let's jump into the deck, talk about some of the ratios. First, I'll go through talking about the engine, the main engine of the deck. Then I'll go ahead and talk about the actual hand traps and then traps and stuff like that. So for main monster, and this is mostly just the monster part of it. So let's talk about that. We got here the 2 Blue Eyes White Dragon. Not much to really say about it. I think this ratio is probably my favorite ratio here. 3 is too much. 1 is too little. I think 1, you risk the of getting bestialed or something like that, and you won't have access to your Blue Eyes, and that kind of sucks. Also, there's a bunch of times where I'll have 1 on the board, and I just want summon a second one. So having 2 basically lets you do this. Lets you summon 1 on your opponent's turn. Lets you summon a second on your turn. So that's basically the idea, right? So you can always infinitely just recycle the Blue Eyes if you have 2 of them. And there's a lot of occasions where I'll have 2 on the board. So yeah, I definitely think 2 Blue Eyes is the way to go. Doing 1 Jet Dragon. Jet Dragon's been really good. I did take the deck out over the weekend to play a couple games with some friends and played a couple games with some different opponents. Played against the new Orion deck, I think it's what it's called, with the Gravekeeper or the Temple of the King. Played against them. I also played against Raziel, and that was kind of like my first time playing against them. But Jet Dragon in general, it's been pretty good, especially on Master Duels. It's one of those cards that people have to be really wary about. If it's in your graveyard, it always comes back out as 3K beat stick that gives protection to everything. So they always have to try to bistro it or banish it or something. Otherwise, Jet Dragon keeps coming back out, and it just becomes a really annoying card to deal with. And on the top, on the fact that it also protects your cards from destruction, which is really nice. Especially if you want to protect your Buster Blader combo, your back row, your True Light. Just a fantastic card overall. If you got room in your deck or you just want to play more, you can even play 2 copies. If you have 2 copies on the board, your opponent just can't destroy anything at all on your side of the board, which is kind of cool. Anyways, next off we have 2 Buster Bladers. So I went back to the 1-in-1 ratio here because I made some changes to the Buster Blader engine, which I'll talk about in a second here. I was playing 2. This one, my last build. But, it's nice to be able to search it off of the Buster Web. But I also sometimes miss the fact that I had, the regular Buster Blader in my hand, so I could actually fuse it away. There are times where I'd rather have this in my hand. Granted, there's no way to really search out the original Buster Blader. If you drew this in your hand, you can always use the Roar of the Dragon plus another dragon on the board or in your hand to fuse into Buster Blader, which is kind of nice. And also, if you have this in your hand and you have a Buster Whelp, you can also distribute the Buster Whelp to just special summon the Buster Blader from your hand. So that's another option there. Unfortunately, this one, I wish it had the continuous ability where it's considered Buster Blader everywhere, including your hand and deck. But this one only counts as a Buster Blader monster or Buster Blader when it's in the graveyard or on the field. So limits its use a little bit that way. With the new ratios I'm playing, I think it's okay to play 1-in-1, and I'll get into that in just a second here. 3 Sages, not much to say about that. 3 Maiden, not much to say about that. And finally, just the 2 Buster Whelp. So I had to cut Buster Whelp down to 2 for a couple reasons, right? So one reason is I needed to make room for another card I'm trying out. And so I had to cut it down to 1. And the fact that you really only need to ever see 1. So as long as you see your Sage, you're almost always going to see your Whelp. So you don't really need 3 copies that badly, unless you're playing the Dragon Buster in the deck too, then maybe you need it. But if you're playing the minimized version of the Buster Blader engine, so let me take away these cards, right? Let me show you the rest of the Buster Blader engine cards. So we're playing basically just 6 cards for the Buster Blader engine to sort of minimize our brickiness, right? So you can even just play this. You can even do just 5-card engine. But the thing I found with the 5-card engine is that you risk just drawing into a Buster Blader and then bricking the whole engine. So that's why I like to play 2 Buster Bladers. So in the event that you do draw one of them, your trap card here is still alive. The Destruction Sword, doesn't matter if you draw it or not. You can always pitch it. But your only 2 targets for your search with Buster Whelp is usually Prologue and this thing. So if you summon Buster Whelp and you already have a Prologue in hand, and you still have the 2 Buster Bladers in your deck, then yes, you can just add 1 to your hand just to use it as a discard fodder for wishes or something like that. Or, eventually, whatnot, right? And then you can activate Prologue and send these 2 to the graveyard, and you're good to go. And then that makes Wish or Dragon Buster a little more better in terms of the cards that it can search. It can search mainly 2 cards, right? These 2 and I guess Destruction Sword Memory if you really wanted to, but you don't really want to be searching that card. So 6-card Buster Blader engine, and so we cut it down to include this card right here. I'll just bring it out early. It's this thing. It's called Puri Risk Map, I think is what it's called. So it's an old card. Used to play it in my original Blue Eyes White Dragon deck too. But back then, you're usually just getting this thing to get into Sage and to get into your eggs and stuff. But nowadays, you don't even care about the eggs anymore. The eggs are not that good anymore. You're still trying to search out Sage. That's your main target for this card, right? So you're always going to be trying to search out Sage. And it's just a good card to try to get into this, to get into Buster Whelp, or into your Maiden here, and then into your Buster Whelp. So there's a few ways you can search with Buster Whelp, right? As long as you get Wishes or you get Sage, you'll always end up on the Buster Whelp. So hence why we cut it down to 2, because we don't really need it, see it all that much. Thing about this map card is you also search out cards like Maiden. So you also search for Maiden. Keep in mind though, if you do search for Maiden, you do have to normal summon her before you're able to use her effect, because the map will lock you out of their effects of the card that you search until you actually normal summon it. So that's something to keep in mind for, I think, 2 whole turns, your turn and your opponent's turn. So that's just something to keep in mind. Other cards you can also search out for is Veiler. You can also search for Droll Lockbird. Let me just go ahead and bring them out here. Anyways, kind of show you guys. Yeah, you can also search out these if you wanted to. Veiler and Droll. And yeah. Now, if you search Veiler or Droll, you can add it to your hand, but you won't be able to use their effects on your opponent's turn because, like I said, this locks you out of it. So you do have to wait a whole rotation for that. Now, you can just do that if if you have nothing else to do, and you just want to thin out your deck, then you can just add these to your hand and then wait a turn or something, 2 turns, then you use it. But keep in mind, you normally only want to search for these 2 cards. If you have Sage, or if you're missing a Maiden, you can grab Maiden, normal summon her, and do the whole shenanigans. You can even like just search Maiden, summon her, and then use her effect to get a True Light. But it does waste your normal summon though, so that's not really optimal. You almost always want to search for a Sage here. So that's the main engine, right? So let's talk about hand traps. So let's bring in the hand traps here. And we got here basically pretty much the same, I want to say. Nothing's changed too dramatically, but I will want to talk about this. So, all right, how do we break it up? So Ash Blossom, I still really like Ash. If you have Dominus Purge, or I think it's Dominus Purge, or not Impulse, but I think it's Dominus Purge. So if you have Dominus Purge, then you probably don't want to play Ash. I don't have Purge, so I'm playing Ash instead. Purge also locks you out of Ash, so you only usually choose one or the other. I tend to find Ash a bit more, I want to say, versatile in some sense, because it does stop, a couple of things. But however, it doesn't destroy the card, where Purge can potentially destroy the card. So, not really just talk about Ash all that much. One of each of the Bystials, not gonna really talk about that too much. Your usual Imperm here. Okay, so the change I made was I cut down Veiler to 2. Veiler is still decent. It's not the most impactful hand trap for sure, but the fact that you can just search it out is also a starter technically. If you normal summon it, you can also send it to the graveyard to go into Spirit. I had to cut it down to 2 because I also want to play one Nibiru, and I'll explain why I'm playing the one Nibiru. But you can kind of get an idea of why I'm playing one Nibiru. But either way, just two Veilers, one Nibiru. And then finally, I decided to put this card back in, Droll and Lockbird. So, went out this weekend, tested the deck a little bit at locals, and I decided to throw in Droll in the main deck just to see how it would perform, and man, it really did impress me. So, back then, I thought it was a little bit more dead. If you're playing against a lot of Malice decks, or like Labyrinth or something, then yes, this card is super bad. Like, you want to, it's like the worst card in your hand. However, most of the meta is still revolving around a lot of searching, so, for example, any of the Fiendsmith cards, right? The Fiendsmith require a bunch of searching. They go Lockama, or not Lockama, sorry, they go Engraver, right? Pitch Engraver, search for the spell. You draw them, and they just pass turn. Yeah, well, that engine passes turn, right? They can't really do much else with the Engraver and Engrave and the spell anymore. They have to just try to get 2 bodies in the graveyard, or on the bottom, onto the field to get into Moonlight, and then go about their combo that way. Or with Ryziel, they have 7th Tachyon. You use this when they search with 7th Tachyon. They just kind of stop there too. Even the Gravekeeper stuff, the new Orion stuff. I played against them, and it was my first time playing against them. And yeah, if you draw them at the correct time, sometimes they'll just, pass their turn too, because they do need a little bit of searching. Granted, they mostly set stuff from their deck. There is a couple cards that does search, and so if you draw them at the right moment, then they just basically stop there too. Also good against the mirror match, obviously, for obvious reasons. And yeah, against a lot of decks, just being able to draw people is really nice. And the fact that if you have your Buster Lock out and you draw them, then they generally just pass turn. And I did that to my opponent. Like, he was ahead on cards, I think, but I had the draw and the prologue, and I just flipped draw. Or after he searched, right, I want to go ahead and activate the draw, activate the Buster Waiter, and he couldn't out the board anymore because he couldn't search for what he needed to try to break the Buster Lock. So that's why we're adding draw back in. Good card. Also, keep in mind, you could also normal summon this thing. You can't use Mausoleum to summon it, but you can use your regular normal summon to summon it and actually go into Spirit. So that's just something else to keep in mind there. It is a spellcaster, so that's kind of neat there. Same thing with the the Veiler, obviously, but you don't want to be normal summoning any of this if you can help it. But it is there. All right, and then finally for the spells, right? So let me go into the spells here. So we got the 2 maps, obviously the 2 designators here. and then just the Blue Eyes stuff. Not gonna really talk about the Blue Eyes stuff here too much. One Mausoleum, Three Wishes. I already talked about the map, so I'm just gonna put that to the side. So Roar, I bumped it to 2 because I did like the second Roar sometimes. Second Roar helps with making Triple Wishes less dead, so that's kind of nice. And the second Roar, or the Roar, sometimes helps you to play through when your opponent imperms or veilers your spirit. Because when they hit the spirit, you almost have no way of getting into Blue Eyes at that point. Because you really need Mausoleum. Unless you hard open Mausoleum, if you can't get into Mausoleum, then you cannot get into your Blue Eyes, and your whole deck kind of falls apart. Because you need that Blue Eyes in the graveyard. Roar lets you kind of cheat around that. So if you drew Roar, you can just wait for your opponent to imperm or ash this or veiler it, whatever. Right? They stop the spirit, or they draw and lockbird you after you search with Sage. Yeah, you can just use Roar to bring out a Blue Eyes White Dragon from your deck, and if you already have Maiden in the graveyard, you can kind of continue your play. So that's one thing I like about Roar. Obviously, it's not the greatest card ever, but it does have its use sometimes. And sometimes when I draw, say I open up with both a Roar and a Wish in the hand, I will use Wish to discard the Roar, search for another Roar, and then continue from there. So that's what I like about having 2 Roars. And then obviously you can use Roar's Graveyard Effect to fuse too if you're really desperate. You can fuse into Tyrant Dragon, or you can fuse into Buster Blader if you have Buster Blader on the field or in your hand, the original Buster Blader, or if you have Destruction Swordsman. So there is a chance for you to go ahead and use this to get into those fusions if you're really, really desperate. Okay, so let's talk about the Designator. So Designator is the 2 card I wanted to try out because this deck does get hand trapped pretty hard, and while you can play through most hand trap, the one hand trap you can't play really through that easily is Droll and Lockbird, right? Droll and Lockbird hard stops you. You do need, in your average turn, you're maybe searching like 3 to 4 times, right? So if they draw you, you're basically kind of right? So like for example, you normal summon this, that's one search, right? You go into this, that's a second search. You go into Maiden, you go into I don't know, Wishes, that's like a third search. You search for Whelp, you summon Whelp, you search again. So it's like you do need at least like 3 or 4 searches before you kind of complete your turn. So when you get drolled, it really, really does hurt our ability to continue our plays, right? So to kind of help fight against that, we obviously have the one call by, right? That helps a little bit. But the cross out here is definitely just try to push through the drolls, push through a couple other cards, and I'll kind of show you the main droll targets, right? Or the crossnader targets. So you have all this, all that. So these are like your main targets, right? You have the Veiler, you have Droll, you have the one Nibiru, the one Imperm, you have Druid Swarm, Magnamut. In case you're playing against a mirror match or something, they're trying to hit your Blue Eyes in the graveyard or whatever, you can Designator them and protect that. Obviously Ash Blossom. If you're playing against a mirror match, obviously you can hit like anything in the deck, right? So yeah, so in our main deck we have a total of essentially more or less 5 main targets, right? So these are going to be the most common cards you'll see. You'll see probably this side here. You'll see Droll, Ash, and Imperm. Probably the most common hand traps you'll see. The less uncommon ones would be like Nibiru and Veiler, and then sort of like Druid Swarm, Magnet Hut. Most people side these cards, they don't really main it. If you're playing against Malice, obviously they might have this main deck already. So yeah, just like there's enough targets for us to kind of stop. Even if you draw them and they try to like call by the grave or something, you can also go cross out and call by to kind of protect your hand traps to force them to pass their turn or something like that. So those are some uses for the cross out here. And I'm only playing 2 because I think 2 is an okay number. Because you really only want to see 1 in your opening hand. You want to see either a cross out or a call by. You don't really want to see like 3 of these in your hand, in your opening hand. Also, they're once per turn too, so it's like we don't really need to see more than that. And yeah, those are the cards I'm trying out there to this deck to make it a little bit more resilient to hand traps and the likes. And also explains why I'm playing the one Nibiru there. Okay, finally, to finish off the deck here, just one of each here. The one trap and one true light and one of the traps. All right, moving on to the side deck. Let's talk about that because it sort of plays hand-in-hand a little bit with our main deck. So we have 3 Artifact Lancea. Normally you side this against Malice. Sometimes you can counter side a evenly match, but don't really recommend that. It's mostly just for Malice. And then we have 2 Ogre and 1 Ghost Spell. Same idea. If you believe your opponent's playing Ghost Ogre, you can siding Ghost Ogre, keep the Designator in the deck to kind of protect yourself from this. Same thing with Ghost Spell. You think they're really going to side a lot of Ghost Spells against you, you can do it. Ghost Spell hurts us the least, I think. But it still can't hurt us. If it stops True Light, or it stops Spirits, or it stops the Roar, that can kind of be an issue. So, you know, it's nice to be able to kind of protect that combo when you do that. Speaking of which, I forget. Sorry, I totally forgot what I was going to talk about my deck. But anyways, so that's what we got there. And then for board breakers here, going over this weekend, I noticed a couple of things. Right, this deck has a hard time breaking boards occasionally, given how our hand looks. And obviously, there's so many different board breakers in the game right now. You have Lightning Storm, Evenly Match. You have Ultimate Slayer, Metal Tronus, Forbidden Droplet. Yeah, just into Dark Ruler, obviously, and so many other options, right? And I sat there and thought about it, and I decided to go with Dark Ruler because it does hit the whole board, which is nice. And it doesn't waste your normal summon. It doesn't waste your special summon. Like Lava Golem and Kaijus are really good for stopping things that are like untargetable, indestructible, blah blah blah, right? But you're using up your normal for Lava Golem. Kaiju only hits one thing. Same thing with Raw Spear mode. This deck needs its normal, so we can't play any of those, right? Droplet requires too many resources. I tried it, didn't really like it too much because the deck does run it really dries up your hand, so you don't really have too many ways to make Droplet all that good. So couldn't really use Droplet that well. What else did I try? Ultimate Slayer, it's good, but we use up a lot of our extra decks, so it's kind of hard to start pitching stuff to the graveyard for our for Ultimate Slayer. That we only really have 1 Exceeds in the extra deck, so it's kind of not that great against something like Raziel, where you probably need more of a robust extra deck with more Exceeds to sort of effectively use Ultimate Slayer. Granted, you could slide in a couple other different cards, but I decided against that. Decided to just go with Dark Ruler, because if you can turn the game into like a skill drain game, we win, right? So the idea is just a 1-turn skill drain for your opponent's cards. We're playing Blue Eyes, so we are bringing out a ton of big vanilla monsters, if anything, right? Blue Eyes, we have Buster Bladers, we got Tyrant Dragon. Like Dark Ruler no more, plus a Tyrant Dragon right here will clear up your opponent's entire board. It will just attack everything. And that's the cool thing about that. So in theory, right, if you can just stop them from interacting with you using their monster effects, perfect. Now, obviously, you still have to deal with hand traps. You still got to deal with the back row. Back row is not as scary compared to the monsters that they put out on the board. The most scary back row deck is going to be like Labyrinth and the new Orion deck, right, with the Gravekeeper or the Temple of the King stuff. But other than that, most interaction is going to be with the monsters. So if you can just Dark Ruler them, unless they had like Red Hot Archfiend or something, that kind of sucks, but no one really summons out Hot Red. So if you can Dark Ruler them, stop them from using all their effects, you can beat over literally everything in the monster zone. If you're playing against the mirror match, then it's a little harder, but given that, we should have plenty of power to just hit over everything. And you're not really too worried about OTKing too, because you do have the potential to OTK the turn after if you just get rid of all their cards. So I decided to go and try out Dark Ruler. It's still in the testing phase, so I don't know if this will be a card I'm going to keep. But for now, with all the other options out on the game right now, I think Dark Ruler will do better for the deck than other cards. Okay. Then we also have our back row hate, right? So I mainly use Lightning Storm as back row hate. Same thing with Harpies. The deck does get hit by her back row. If they're playing Floodgates, they're playing a lot of like Solemn Judgment, Solemn Strikes, things like that. Then yes, we're gonna need something to get rid of the back row. Otherwise, if we don't get rid of the back row, if our first normal summon gets countered, if it gets negated, Solemn Strike, Solemn Warning, blah blah blah, then we're just gonna lose the game. So really do need some back row hate. And if they're playing back row, they're more likely to play multiple back rows rather than just one. So I decided not to go with Cyclone or anything like that, because you may get rid of one. If you blind MST is what we call it, right? You blind MST, you might hit something good, maybe not. So you may as well just play Lightning Storm or Harpies and try to get rid of their entire back row, to then proceed with your plays. So, and it came up across, I think, the Orion deck. I just played this, and he was forced to either let it go through, blow up his whole board, or Solemn Judgment it. So it bait out with Solemn Judgment, and then I was able to play the game after that. So, yeah. Okay, and then speaking of which, Solemn Judgment, right? Now, I sided this card in a few times. It just never came up. I only sided going first, too, because I want to use it to protect my Buster Lock. But it never really came up. I never really saw the card, so I can't say if it's really good or bad. But, I mean, overall, it's a good card, right? And we're playing the map card now. We're giving up half our life points. So Solemn Judgment and the map card can always be activated. It's just paying half our life points. So and that's something we can always pay. So not a huge deal there. I wouldn't recommend this or I wouldn't recommend Solemn Strike in the map, because the map forces you to lose half the life points. So with Solemn Judgment, that's perfectly fine to go there. All right. Extra deck wise, let's just go through it real quickly. Nothing's really changed. We have the Crimson package here. Obviously, I went into it a few times. The one time I did go into it, or once or twice during the weekend. One time I got Super Poly, that kind of sucked. But it's kind of nice to have. I mean, obviously there's better cards to play. Definitely, you can play more Tyrant Dragons. You can play Moonlight, Rose Dragon. You can play Azure Eyes. There's a bunch of other cards you can play. You don't need this package. It's pretty much a Winmore sort of thing, and it kind of looks cool. One time my opponent didn't interrupt my entire game board at all until I went to this thing, and then he impermed it. I was like, oh, okay, well, that sucks. But yeah, just be careful of that. And then we have one Ultimateness, 2 Spirits. Sometimes I wish I had 3, but didn't really come up that often. 1 Light Dragon, or Light Storm Dragon, 1 Buster, 1 Typhoon. Did go into this guy once or twice, I think. Don't really need him, but he is sometimes nice to have as just a big beat stick, right? Now keep in mind, you can't summon this guy if you have the Spirit Dragon. If you have this thing on the board, then you cannot go into this guy, so just be careful. Even if you have only just the Spirit Dragon, it kind of sucks because he locks you into it, unless it got negated by Imperm or Vec Failure. So also we're playing 2 Spirits, by the way. And then we're playing 1 Heavenly and 1 Little Knight. Sorry, I'm slurring my words there. And then 1 Ultimate, 1 Tyrant, and 1 Buster Blader. So Little Knight is actually pretty decent. Some of this thing a few times, because what I would do is, like, if I had a dead Buster Dragon that was gonna die the turn after, I would just use this and like a level 1 tuner or something just to go into Little Knight. Or if I had like I just needed removal or something, hit a back row, hit a field spell, going to Little Knight was not a bad thing. Super generic, just 2 monsters. Keep in mind, you can't use Blue Eyes White Dragon to go into Little Knight, because Blue Eyes White Dragon is a normal monster. This requires 2 effect monsters, so that's the only thing you really got to keep in mind. Also, you can't use it with Spirits either. If Spirits on the board, you can't go into Little Knight. Unless it, once again, unless the spirit gets negated or something. But yeah, I often used it with Buster Dragon or any of the other stuff that I didn't really need. I would just go into that. All right. So yeah, that basically concludes the deck profile here. Yeah, like I said, the deck is pretty fun to play, and we're just trying to come up with better ratios, better solutions to some of our inherent problems, being that we are, one, a Blue Eyes deck, two, we're playing a bunch of bricks, and three, there's better versions of the Blue Eyes. You have Primites, you have even the new branded Fusion version of the deck that's going around. You're using, I think, Spirit of the Eyes of Blue here to lock your opponent, which is kind of hilarious. You would go Sanctifier or summon this thing onto your opponent's board and lock them out. So I've seen that thing floating around too, which is kind of interesting. I personally don't like that line of play. I may as well just be playing the Buster Lock with the Dragon Buster, I suppose, right? So that's just something to think about, right? But yeah, other than that, this is the third version of the deck. Gonna keep playing it, gonna keep testing it and see how it does in the meta here. So far, having quite a lot of fun. On Master Duel, I think I reached Master Rank with the deck, so it does have some legs to stand on. I win the majority of my duels. Granted, it's best of one and it's maxi format, but either way, I think it's still a powerful deck. Does some pretty crazy things. Main issue, like I said, you sometimes can break, and so we're just trying to figure out ways to unbreak yourself. So, anyways, that's it, guys. If you have any questions, comments, just let me know. Hope to see you guys next time. Peace.